The scent of eucalyptus and fresh roses lingered in the air as I stood beneath the warm glow of string lights suspended from the high beams of the old barn. It had been beautifully renovated, whitewashed walls, rustic wooden tables, and a soft golden hue from candles flickering in antique holders. Everything about my sister Emily's wedding felt like something out of a dream. As I watched her, radiant in her ivory lace gown, exchanging loving glances with her new husband, Thomas, I felt a swell of pride rise in my chest. Emily is 5 years younger than me. I still remember braiding her hair before school, chasing her around the yard in our pajamas, comforting her after her first heartbreak. And now here she was, glowing with happiness, marrying a man who seemed to have stepped straight out of a romantic novel. Thomas was charming, articulate, successful in his career in sustainable architecture, and loved by everyone he met. My parents adored him. My colleagues couldn't stop talking about how kind and poised he was when we introduced him at a dinner party a few months ago. Even Marcus, my husband, had once told me Thomas was almost too perfect. I was seated beside Marcus near the front, watching the ceremony unfold. The string quartet began playing softly as Emily and Thomas stood under an arch adorned with greenery and twinkling fairy lights. Their hands were clasped, their eyes locked in that kind of gaze that only people madly in love can hold for more than a few seconds. The officiant spoke with warmth and gravity, weaving words about love, patience, and partnership. My mother sniffled quietly beside me, dabbing her eyes with a silk handkerchief. My father, a composed man by nature, had a rare softness in his expression. I took a slow breath, allowing the moment to settle inside me like a warm stone. It felt right. All of it. After the exchange of vows, tender, funny, tearful, the guests broke into applause. Emily laughed, brushing a tear from her cheek, and Thomas pulled her into a kiss that was both respectful and passionate. I clapped, smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. The music picked up as they walked down the aisle, hand in hand, victorious in love. The reception began soon after. The barn was transformed into a cozy, elegant space filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the scent of roasted rosemary chicken and truffle mashed potatoes. People danced between courses, toasts were given, and I caught glimpses of Emily's happiness blooming in every smile she gave. It was contagious. Marcus and I swayed together during a slow song, his arms wrapped tightly around my waist. He kissed my forehead and said, "She looks happy." I nodded, unable to express just how full my heart felt. I had worried for months about the logistics, about whether our estranged uncle would show up and cause a scene, or if it would rain. But none of that mattered now. Everything had come together, as if the universe had orchestrated each moment with deliberate care. I couldn't remember the last time I had seen my family so united. My mother and aunt, who hadn't spoken in years, were laughing at a shared memory. My cousins, scattered across different states, had come together for the first time in nearly a decade. Even my reserved father was clinking glasses with old friends and beaming at his youngest daughter. There was a moment, near the end of the evening, when I stepped outside to catch my breath. The night air was cool and crisp, carrying with it the distant sound of crickets and soft music from the barn. I looked up at the stars, wrapped in a borrowed shawl, and felt grateful. For Emily. For this night. For the fragile but beautiful peace that held us all together. Nothing felt out of place. Not yet. It happened so suddenly, I almost missed it. One moment, we were all smiling, watching Emily and Thomas exchange their vows under that glittering arch. The next, Marcus's grip on my hand tightened, sharply, urgently. I turned my head, startled, and caught a glimpse of his face. He was pale, his jaw tense, lips parted slightly as if struggling to breathe. But it was his eyes that unsettled me most. Fixed. Unblinking. Locked not on Emily, but on Thomas. I whispered his name, a quiet murmur just above the soft music and the rustle of guests shifting in their chairs. "Marcus, are you okay?" He didn't respond at first. His gaze remained locked. Thomas was reciting a vow about truth and loyalty, his voice steady, deep, and confident, but Marcus's expression was unraveling. I squeezed his hand, harder now. "Marcus?" Then, barely audible, he whispered back. His voice trembled. "I can't pretend I didn't see it. He's not who he says he is." My breath caught in my throat. I leaned in closer, confused, trying to mask our exchange from anyone nearby. What are you talking about? But Marcus didn't look at me. He couldn't tear his eyes from Thomas. He shook his head slightly, as if trying to convince himself he was wrong and failing. I searched his face for some sign, anything to explain what he meant. My pulse quickened, a knot forming in my stomach. The applause burst around us as Thomas and Emily sealed their vows with a kiss. Marcus clapped slowly, mechanically. I clapped too, but my eyes never left him. There was something raw in his silence now, something heavy and unfamiliar. I leaned in again as people began rising from their seats. Marcus, please. What are you talking about? He finally turned to me, just briefly. His eyes were darker than I'd ever seen them, not from anger, but from something deeper, fear, maybe, or disbelief. He spoke low, careful not to let anyone else hear. I know him, Noemi. Or I knew someone like him. From years ago. I thought he disappeared. The words sat between us like a weight neither of us could move. The rest of the guests were filing into the barn for the reception. My parents waved us over, smiles bright and unaware. Emily and Thomas were surrounded by friends, laughing, hugging. Radiant. Marcus straightened his jacket, putting on the expression he used in board meetings, composed, unreadable. But as we walked together, his hand barely touched mine. He wasn't with me anymore, not fully. He was somewhere else. Back in whatever past had just collided with our present. Inside the barn, the reception was in full swing. Music echoed warmly off the wooden walls, glasses clinked, laughter filled the air. But everything had shifted for me. I watched Thomas move through the room, shaking hands, accepting congratulations with ease, with charm. I studied his posture, his smile, the way he tilted his head when he listened. Nothing seemed off. Nothing betrayed the man Marcus had just described. And yet, I couldn't forget the way Marcus had looked at him. Later, when we found a quiet corner near the back, I pressed him again. What did you mean? How do you know him? He glanced around before speaking, his voice still low. I don't know all the details. Not yet. But if I'm right, his name isn't Thomas. And he's not the kind of man you want near your sister. The music swelled around us, and just then, Emily passed by, her hand in Thomas's. She looked so happy. So sure. Marcus stared after them, lips tight. And in that moment, I felt the ground beneath our perfect night begin to crack. The laughter and music swirled around us like mist, soft and disorienting. But inside me, everything was sharp now. Marcus had cracked something open, and no matter how much I wanted to tape it shut, the questions wouldn't stop pressing in. I needed answers. Immediately. We sat at our assigned table, surrounded by smiling relatives and the clinking of silverware. I leaned closer to Marcus, speaking softly beneath the hum of conversations. You have to tell me what's going on. What do you know about him? Marcus stared at his untouched glass of wine for a long moment. His fingers curled around the stem, knuckles white. Then he exhaled slowly, as if surrendering to something heavy. I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, he began, still not meeting my eyes. But I recognized him the moment I saw his face. It hit me like a punch. He's older now, changed his hair, changed his voice a little. But it's him. I saw him in Seattle. Years ago. He went by a different name then, Daniel. Daniel Weller. That name meant nothing to me. Seattle? Marcus finally looked up. I was working there during grad school, a summer internship at a financial consulting firm. There was a major scandal. Some startup was laundering money through shell companies, dragging in investors under false pretenses. Dozens of families lost everything. And this guy, Daniel, he was one of the key people behind it. Not officially. Not on paper. But I remember seeing him in a meeting, whispering in the ear of the CEO, handing over files. Always just out of the spotlight. When it all collapsed, he vanished. Just disappeared. My throat tightened. But, it was never proven? No, Marcus said bitterly. The company took the fall. Some junior execs were arrested. But Daniel? He walked away. Clean. There was talk that someone powerful pulled strings for him. That he had backup. And then he was gone. I leaned back in my chair, stunned. The world around us blurred, like I was watching it through thick glass. Marcus's voice sounded distant now, muffled by the thrum of my thoughts. You're saying Emily married a man who faked his identity to escape a scandal? I'm saying, Marcus corrected carefully, that he might have. I can't prove it. Not yet. But I swear to you, Noemi, it's the same man. I looked across the room. Thomas, Daniel, was dancing with Emily, spinning her gently, her laughter ringing out like chimes. He looked at her with such affection, such joy. How could that be a lie? I whispered, why would someone like that come back into public life? Into a family like ours? Into a wedding? Marcus shook his head. Maybe he thought enough time had passed. Maybe he thinks he buried the truth deep enough. Or maybe he has help again. All I know is, if he's here, it's not by accident. And it's not innocent. I swallowed hard, my heart thudding in my chest. You have to tell Emily. Not yet, he said quickly. Not until we're sure. I need to find something solid. A connection. A record. If I confront him now, he'll just deny it, make me look crazy. And she won't believe me, not on my word alone. I wanted to argue. I wanted to rush across the room and drag my sister away from him, scream the truth in her ear. But instead, I watched them dance. Watched as she clung to him like he was her safe place. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. And deep down, a part of me wished Marcus had never said anything at all. I couldn't sleep that night. Even after the reception wound down and we returned to the small inn where most of the family was staying, my thoughts kept circling back to Marcus's voice, to the name Daniel Weller, to the invisible threads that seemed to tangle around us the moment Thomas said his vows. I lay in bed with my eyes open, watching the shadows on the ceiling shift with the passing headlights of distant cars. Marcus beside me was silent, still, but I knew he wasn't sleeping either. The next morning, the barn was quiet, transformed once more into a rustic shell of what had been a luminous celebration just hours earlier. Some decorations remained, white ribbons fluttering from the rafters, a half-finished flower arch standing like a ghost of the day before. I stood near the back entrance, heart pounding, waiting for Thomas to come by alone. He always took morning walks, Emily had mentioned it once during a family brunch. Said he liked to get his thoughts in order before the day began. I didn't have to wait long. Around 7 o'clock in the morning, he appeared from the side path behind the inn, dressed in running gear, his breath misting faintly in the crisp summer air. He slowed when he saw me, offering a warm smile. No, Emmy. Didn't expect to see anyone up this early. I returned the smile, or tried to. Morning. Can we talk? His eyebrows lifted, but he nodded. Of course. Everything okay? We stepped inside the barn. The quiet amplified every footstep, every breath. I turned to face him, my arms folded, trying to hide the tremble in my hands. I wanted to ask you something. And I need you to be honest. Thomas's expression shifted. The warmth didn't vanish entirely, but it cooled, like he was retreating inward. Of course. What is it? Have you ever lived in Seattle? I asked. He blinked. Seattle? Yes. Years ago. Around the time of the Halbridge financial collapse. Do you know the name Daniel Weller? For a moment, just a second, I saw it. A flicker, not fear, not guilt exactly, but something of recognition, maybe. His face remained composed, but his eyes hardened slightly. I'm not sure I understand where this is coming from, he said calmly. I've visited Seattle, yes, for conferences. But I've never lived there. And I don't know anyone by that name. His voice was even, his posture open. But there was a shift in his tone, subtle, barely perceptible, but real. A defensive edge under the surface. Are you sure? I pressed. Because someone seems to think otherwise. I don't know what you've heard, he said carefully, but I can assure you, my name is Thomas Bennett, and I have nothing to hide. He took a step closer, not aggressive, but firm. Is this about Emily? Are you worried I'll hurt her? Because I love your sister, no Emmy. I would never do anything to bring harm to her, or to your family. He said the words with conviction, but something about them didn't sit right. They were too prepared, too polished. I studied his face. Then you won't mind if we do a little digging? Just to be sure. Thomas held my gaze. There was no smile now. No warmth. Just silence stretching long between us. I don't know what kind of story you think you've found, he said softly, but I've spent years building a life I'm proud of. I'm not perfect. No one is. But there's nothing in my past that you need to worry about. Emily's voice broke the tension like a sharp chime. Thomas? She entered the barn in a robe, her hair still damp from a shower, barefoot. She looked between us, concern tightening her brow. What's going on? Thomas turned to her with a practiced ease, his voice instantly softening. Just talking. Noemi was asking about my travels. Seattle came up. Emily looked at me, her expression open but curious. I forced a smile. I was just being nosy. Old habits. Thomas walked to her and placed a kiss on her temple. I'll be back in a few minutes. Just needed to clear my head. She nodded, watching him go. When he disappeared through the barn doors, she turned to me. What was that really about? I shook my head. Nothing. I swear. Just something that's probably nothing. Emily stepped closer. Is Marcus okay? He seemed off last night. I hesitated, then lied. He's fine. Just tired. You know how he gets around big crowds. She nodded, but I could see the question still hovering in her eyes. We walked back together in silence. Every step felt like it echoed with something unspoken. Back in our room, I found Marcus by the window, holding his phone. He looked up as I entered. Did you talk to him? Yes, I said. He denied everything. Smoothly. Calmly. Just like someone used to hiding things. Marcus nodded slowly. Then we need more than memories. We need proof. I sat down on the edge of the bed, my mind already racing ahead. Where do we start? He showed me the photo again. The old one, blurry but unmistakable. Thomas, or Daniel, standing among a group of sharply dressed men, a younger Marcus in the background. A time bomb caught on film. It's not enough, I whispered. But it's something. Outside, the sun had risen fully. Light spilled into the room, golden and innocent. But nothing felt innocent anymore. Something was buried deep beneath our perfect ceremony. And I was going to dig it up, no matter what I found. The image haunted me more than I cared to admit. Marcus handed me the phone again, his fingers brushing mine, and I stared down at the screen as if I could will the photo to speak. It was taken in some high-rise conference room, glass walls and modern chairs visible in the background. The lighting was dim, slightly yellowed, and yet the man in the center, Thomas, or the man who called himself Thomas, stood out with uncomfortable clarity. He looked younger, his hair longer, his face more angular, but the smile was unmistakable. Confident. Disarming. The caption, if there ever had been one, was long gone. But Marcus didn't need a caption. He was there. In the background, barely visible, wearing a suit that didn't quite fit, eyes caught mid-blink. He had been a mere intern, a silent witness to something that had unraveled behind closed doors. He used to go by Daniel Weller, Marcus said again, quieter this time. I remember because everyone treated him like some kind of fixer. He was always moving papers, arranging meetings. And then one day he was just gone. Right before the authorities stepped in. I stared at the screen. And this was the company involved in the laundering scheme? He nodded. Halbridge Analytics. They claimed it was all rogue employees and fake subsidiaries, but it went deeper. There were rumors about hidden offshore accounts, shell corporations, even falsified death records. Daniel, Thomas, whatever his name is, he was always one step ahead of it. I handed him the phone back, my hands suddenly cold. So this is our proof? Marcus hesitated. It's a piece of it. It won't hold up alone. Anyone can deny a photo. Say it's a lookalike. Say it was a conference. But it's a start. Later that morning, I went down to the garden where my mother and aunt were arranging leftover flowers into take-home bundles. Emily had already left for a spa morning with her bridesmaids, laughing and carefree, still glowing from the night before. I tried to mirror their mood, but something inside me had changed. I couldn't look at my mother's smile without wondering how much she really knew. Could someone like Thomas weave himself so completely into our lives without help? I excused myself and returned to my room, opening my laptop and beginning my own search. It didn't take long before I started noticing cracks. Public records listed Thomas Bennett's birthplace as Albany, New York, but the address linked to that birth certificate belonged to a property demolished over 15 years ago. His college records traced back to a university that had once dealt with falsified enrollment cases, but his name didn't appear in any of the alumni associations or scholarship archives. I dug deeper. Marriage licenses, tax filings, professional directories. Everything existed, on paper. Everything looked real. But there was no depth, no digital history before a certain year. It was as if Thomas Bennett had come into existence fully formed about 6 years ago. Before that, nothing. I told Marcus what I'd found. He nodded slowly, rubbing his chin. That's classic identity reconstruction. Paper trails created just deep enough to pass a background check but hollow if you know where to look. And if we dig deeper? He looked at me carefully. Then we may find out who helped him build the lie. That afternoon, something else happened. I was walking back from the barn, cutting across the gravel path near the main house, when I heard voices. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but something in the tone caught my attention, low, tense, urgent. I paused behind a hedge, hidden, heart racing. It was Thomas's father, Richard Bennett, speaking to a man I didn't recognize. His suit was too polished, his voice clipped and practiced. They stood close, facing away from me. We took care of everything, Richard said. The name's gone. The files are sealed. The other man didn't look convinced. That might not be enough. Someone's sniffing around. A woman. There was a pause. Richard exhaled. Then we remind her that some stories are better left buried. We didn't go through all this just to have it unravel now. The man leaned in. It's not just about her. If that photo resurfaces, we're finished. I backed away slowly, one step at a time, not daring to breathe until I was inside the inn again. The walls pressed in around me. I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the floor. They were talking about the photo. They knew. And worse, they were prepared to silence anyone who got too close. I told Marcus what I heard. His face tightened, his mouth a flat line. Then it's not just Thomas. There are others protecting him. People with resources. I nodded. We can't tell Emily yet. Not until we have everything. He reached for my hand. Then we get everything. And in that moment, I realized what I had become, not a guest at a perfect wedding, not a sister celebrating love, but a witness preparing for war. The air had shifted around me, dense and quiet, as if the world itself had paused in anticipation. After hearing that conversation behind the hedge, those voices steeped in tension and veiled threats, I no longer felt like a passive observer. I was entangled now. Deeply. Whatever doubt still lingered inside me about Marcus's claims was gone. They knew. They were hiding something serious. And I was dangerously close to it. For the rest of that day, I moved through the wedding weekend events like a shadow of myself. Smiles felt forced, words floated past me. I watched Emily and Thomas like someone studying a stage play, seeing every movement, every exchange, wondering which lines were scripted. The world saw a newlywed couple basking in bliss. I saw a man holding together a mask, so carefully crafted, so expertly worn. That evening, as guests gathered on the back lawn for a casual post-wedding bonfire, I made a decision. I needed more. More than a photo. More than memories. If Thomas, if Daniel, had powerful people covering for him, then I had to be smarter, faster. I wasn't just protecting Emily anymore. I was protecting our entire family from whatever storm was building. I slipped away from the crowd after dinner, claiming a headache. Marcus met me near the edge of the property. His old friend Julian, who still lived in Seattle, had responded to the photo Marcus sent with a short but urgent message, "Call me." You were right. We waited in silence outside the small inn until the call came through. Marcus answered on speakerphone. Julian's voice was low, clipped with anxiety. It's him. There's no doubt. His name was Daniel Weller, and he was involved way deeper than anyone ever proved. The scandal almost pulled in 2 city council members and a district judge. But he had protection, serious protection. Someone erased things for him. Marcus exchanged a glance with me. How did he vanish? Fake death certificate, Julian replied. Filed under an alias. Claimed he died in a boating accident off the coast of Oregon. No body, just enough planted evidence to make it believable. Then, nothing. No trace. Until now. I felt the blood drain from my face. And now he's here. With my sister. Julian hesitated. I don't know how he did it, but if he resurfaced with a new identity, it means he's confident he won't be recognized, or that he has backup ready if things go wrong. You need to be careful. When we ended the call, silence fell like a weight between us. The implications were too large to hold all at once. Marcus took a deep breath. This goes far beyond a wedding. Someone falsified legal documents. Someone powerful erased Daniel Weller. And now he's Thomas Bennett. Our new brother-in-law. The name felt like poison in my mouth. I didn't sleep that night either. Every creak in the old inn, every wind gust outside my window sent a fresh wave of nerves through my spine. I kept replaying that overheard phrase from Richard Bennett, "We've erased that name from his history." They had scrubbed his past clean. They had engineered a version of him that fit perfectly into our lives. The next morning, I decided to test the boundaries. I approached Thomas's father directly, smiling politely, as if nothing were wrong. We were alone on the porch, sipping coffee while Emily and Thomas took photographs with extended family. I kept my voice casual. You and Thomas must be close. Richard looked at me with a grandfatherly charm. He's a fine young man. I couldn't be prouder. I imagine it's been a long road. He seems so established. Almost like he's lived several lives. Richard's smile didn't falter, but his eyes narrowed just slightly. What are you getting at, Noemi? Nothing, I said lightly. Just admiring how well he fits into our family. As if he was designed for it. For a brief moment, his facade cracked. Just a flicker, enough to confirm that he knew what I knew. Or suspected. Then the charm returned. We're lucky, he said. All families have their secrets. What matters is how we protect the ones we love. The message was clear. I walked away before I said something I couldn't take back. That afternoon, I caught a glimpse of someone else watching. An older woman, sitting alone at the edge of the garden, had been at the wedding but hadn't spoken much to anyone. Her eyes followed Thomas wherever he went. At first, I thought it was admiration. But when our eyes met, I saw something different, recognition. And concern. I approached her gently, introduced myself. She hesitated before giving her name, Margot. She claimed to be an old family friend of the Bennets, but her answers were vague. I asked casually, "Have you known Thomas long?" She looked at me for a long time before answering. "Not by that name." The world seemed to tilt. I knew his parents. Before all this. Before the Bennett era. I sat down beside her. "You knew him as Daniel." Margot didn't nod, didn't confirm. But the silence between us said everything. She sipped her tea, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Be careful," she said at last. "Some truths don't want to be found. And some people have forgotten who they used to be." She stood, walked away, and left me sitting there with a head full of questions and a heart that felt more certain than ever. I wasn't alone in what I knew. But that also meant I wasn't the only one in danger. I no longer saw the wedding weekend as a celebration. It had become something else entirely, a stage, a trap, a carefully curated theater of lies. The more I pulled at the threads of Thomas's past, the more I felt the fabric of our lives beginning to fray. But there was no turning back now. Emily's joy had been built on sand, and every day that passed without truth was another day she walked blind into something dangerous. Marcus and I agreed we had to move fast, smart, and in silence. He took the lead with his old connections in Seattle. While I spent the morning with Emily, pretending to help her pack for their honeymoon, forcing smiles and nods, I knew Marcus was on the phone with Julian, preparing to send over copies of the blurry photograph and a list of known aliases tied to Daniel Weller. Julian worked in tech now, and he had contacts in data recovery, cyber investigation, even 2 private legal consultants. It would be discreet, but thorough. That evening, back in our room, Marcus told me they'd already started tracing old employment records and matching Thomas's face against corporate ID databases from over a decade ago. Facial recognition had improved dramatically. Even if he'd aged and changed his name, algorithms didn't lie. "We'll know soon," Marcus said. "And if we can link him to a corporate board or internal meeting minutes, it'll be something that can't be denied." Meanwhile, I took another approach. I dug into the one thing I could do without help, public records. Thomas, or Thomas Bennett, as he called himself, had a well-maintained trail. On paper, his life appeared perfectly legitimate. Birth records, college credentials, tax filings, even property ownership. But something felt off. Too curated. Too complete. Like someone had created a new version of him and forgotten to leave in the messiness of real life. I started with his supposed birthplace, Albany, New York. The address listed on his birth certificate led to a demolished neighborhood, one lost to gentrification years ago. The hospital he was allegedly born in had shuttered its doors the same year he was supposedly delivered. I called the state archive office, posing as a genealogical researcher. They couldn't locate the certificate in their central system, only in a smaller county registry, and even there, the inked handwriting looked wrong. Different. Next, I searched for his college enrollment. The institution existed, yes. It even had a Thomas Bennett listed in the graduation program from over a decade ago. But when I called the registrar's office and casually inquired about alumni verification for an upcoming wedding article, an excuse I'd prepared, they hesitated. "We have no record of any contact details for that student," they said. "He's not part of our alumni newsletter. Not even our donor records." That's unusual for someone with a degree from our program. Unusual was an understatement. By the end of that day, I had compiled a list of mismatches, a diploma that never linked to an alumni ID, tax filings that began abruptly at age 25, with no record of employment before, a driver's license issued in a different state than the one he allegedly resided in for 10 years. The pieces were there, but they didn't align naturally. They had been manufactured. I met Marcus by the fire pit near the edge of the woods just after sunset. I showed him everything. He nodded, his jaw tight, eyes focused. "There's a pattern here," he said. "Someone built this identity from scratch. They didn't miss anything obvious, but they didn't know how to make it messy. Real people have inconsistencies. This one's too smooth." I nodded. "He's not just hiding. He's protected. Someone is making sure this stays buried." Marcus leaned forward, lowering his voice. Julian's team found something else. Daniel Weller's name appears, briefly, in a set of leaked documents from a failed banking merger. Someone tried to wipe it, but the metadata shows he was listed as a compliance advisor under an alias. The connection is weak, but it's a thread. A name. A role. A trace of the man he used to be. If we follow it? I asked. Marcus's voice dropped further. Then we might find out who buried him. And why. At that moment, a gust of wind rustled the trees. The fire cracked. I looked out into the darkness, thinking of Emily, of the joy in her eyes as she hugged Thomas that morning, as she kissed him goodbye before he left to take a call that likely had nothing to do with work. She didn't know. And I couldn't tell her. Not yet. But I was getting closer. Closer to the moment where everything would break. I was brushing my teeth when Marcus received the call. His phone lit up on the nightstand, vibrating insistently against the wood, and before he even answered, I saw it in his face, something had shifted. His hand hovered just a second before he picked up, and as he pressed the phone to his ear, I stopped everything and listened. It was Julian. And this time, his voice was steady but urgent. We confirmed it. His real name is Daniel Weller. Not just that, he was one of 3 central operatives in the Halbridge laundering scheme. He worked under the radar, never signed official documents, but his fingerprints are all over the internal communications. Someone tried to delete his name from the server logs, but the backup files had traces. IP addresses. Access timestamps. We have proof. I stood frozen, toothpaste foaming in my mouth, as Marcus listened and asked quiet, focused questions. Then he ended the call, turned to me, and simply said, "It's him. There's no doubt anymore." I rinsed my mouth, gripped the edge of the sink. What do we do now? Marcus took a breath. There's more. Julian said Daniel, Thomas, whatever we want to call him, disappeared after the company was raided. Completely dropped off the grid. The only reason he wasn't arrested was because someone in government, someone high, stepped in. Covered for him. Buried the investigation. That was the final blow. I sat on the edge of the bed, heart pounding. So he escaped justice. Reinvented himself. Built this perfect version of a man and walked into our lives like nothing had happened. Marcus nodded. And now he's married to your sister. The words hit harder than they should have. Married. That word, once filled with hope and celebration, now felt like a chain. I closed my eyes and pictured Emily's face, her joy so pure it hurt. She had no idea. She had tied herself to someone whose entire identity was a mask. My stomach turned violently. I stood, rushed to the bathroom, and vomited. Marcus held my hair back, silent, calm. When I finished, I leaned against the cold tile wall and whispered, "She has to know." "Yes," he said. "But not from us. Not just yet. We have to do this carefully. If we confront him now, he'll deny everything. Maybe even vanish again. We need to make sure that when Emily hears it, she hears the full truth, with no room for doubt." Later that day, we sat on the patio outside the inn, trying to map out the next steps. Marcus was already preparing a file, documents, timestamps, screenshots. Julian was working on getting the final pieces verified. But even with everything we had, I couldn't stop thinking about the deeper implications. Thomas hadn't just run from a crime, he had recreated himself entirely. Someone had helped him do it. Someone had made it possible. And I had a feeling I knew where to start looking. That evening, I called my mother. Asked her casually if Dad was around. She said he was at his office, again, sorting out paperwork related to the wedding. It was odd. My father was efficient to the point of obsession. Any wedding-related logistics would have been settled weeks ago. But I didn't question it. I simply drove there. The office was dark when I arrived, but the door wasn't locked. I stepped inside, the familiar scent of cedar and ink hitting me immediately. The place hadn't changed in years, same leather-bound volumes lining the shelves, same heavy oak desk at the center. I knew where he kept the private files. I'd seen him do it 100 times. Behind the cabinet on the far wall, there was a small compartment. You had to remove a sliding panel and press on the left side, something only someone who had watched him closely would notice. I opened it and pulled out a series of unmarked folders. Legal documents. Bank statements. Case notes. Then I saw it. A thin black folder, labeled only with a D. My heart stuttered. I opened it slowly, hands trembling. Inside were 2 photographs, one of a younger Thomas, still going by Daniel, seated at a boardroom table beside a man in a federal uniform. The other was a scan of an identity change application, legally signed, authorized by someone in the Department of Treasury. The signature had been blacked out with a heavy stroke, but the watermark was real. And behind those, a letter. Addressed to my father. Your discretion in this matter is appreciated. As discussed, the subject is to remain protected. His reintegration into public life has been approved under strict guidelines. Should any complications arise, contact the liaison immediately. There was a contact number. A name, G. Lancaster. I stared at the page until the words blurred. My father had known. From the beginning. He had helped Thomas, Daniel, get a new life. A new name. A new chance. And he had said nothing. When I left the office, the folder in my bag, my hands were shaking. I didn't know if I was angry or devastated or afraid. Maybe all three. Marcus was waiting in the car. The engine running. I handed him the folder. He opened it, skimmed the contents, and said only one word, damn. We sat there in silence, the weight of betrayal thick between us. My father knew. And now I had to face him. The folder burned in my hands as if it had a pulse of its own, its contents heavier than anything I had ever held. Betrayal does not come clean and sharp, it seeps in, slow and corrosive. I had always seen my father as the firm center of our family, the man who stood for reason, control, and integrity. Now I knew that wasn't the whole truth. Maybe it never had been. Marcus and I drove back in silence, the night pressing in around us, the folder resting on my lap like a bomb neither of us knew how to defuse. When we reached the inn, I couldn't stay in the room. My hands itched for motion, for answers, for confrontation. I told Marcus I needed to go to the house. Alone. He didn't argue. It was nearly midnight when I arrived. The living room light was still on, casting a warm glow over the familiar furniture. I stepped inside without knocking, my key still fit. My father was in his armchair, a legal pad on his lap, reading glasses halfway down his nose. He looked up at me calmly, no surprise in his expression. I wondered when you'd come, he said, setting the pad aside. I didn't sit. I held out the folder. He took it without flinching, opened it, and flipped through the documents with practiced ease. So, I said, voice low, you knew. Yes, he replied. No hesitation. No apology. You helped him disappear. You helped him become Thomas Bennett. You helped him marry Emily. I helped him survive, he said. My breath caught in my throat. You're not going to deny it? You're not even going to pretend you didn't know who he really was? He closed the folder carefully and set it on the table beside him. No, Emmy, I made a choice. Years ago. One that saved lives. I laughed, bitter, cold. Whose lives? Yours? His? You sold out your own daughter to protect a man with a forged identity and a criminal past. His gaze remained steady. He's not who he was. You think you're uncovering a scandal, but all you're doing is dragging your sister through something she doesn't understand. She deserves to understand. I snapped. She deserves the truth. My father stood now, his voice rising, the edge I had never heard before cutting through. The truth isn't always what people need. Sometimes, the truth destroys more than it saves. I took a step back, repulsed. You don't get to decide that for her. You never did. He exhaled and turned away, facing the fireplace. Daniel saved my life. The words dropped like stone. I stared at him. What? He didn't turn around. Years ago, I was involved in a case. Sensitive, high level. I made enemies. Someone tried to expose confidential evidence, twisted it, made it look like I was complicit. I would have lost everything. My career. My reputation. Maybe my freedom. He turned to me again, slower this time. Daniel stopped it. He intercepted the leak. He took a risk, exposed himself, burned a contact he'd been hiding behind. He didn't do it for gain. He did it because I helped him once. When he was still just a kid with more intelligence than direction. He owed me. And when my time came, he paid that debt. I stared at him, struggling to piece together this version of the story. And in return, you helped him become someone else. I helped him start over, my father said. I vouched for him. Quietly. I knew people. I pulled strings. And yes, when he met Emily, I encouraged it. I felt sick again. You didn't think she deserved to choose? To know who he was? I thought, if she saw the man he is now, not the boy he used to be, maybe that would be enough. Footsteps on the stairs cut through the tension. Emily stood there, her face pale, her arms wrapped around herself. I heard everything. My father froze. Emily, he started, but she lifted her hand. Don't. Just don't. She descended the stairs slowly, each step deliberate, her gaze never leaving him. You manipulated me. Both of you. You let me believe in a fairy tale while covering up a nightmare. It's not like that, he said quickly. He loves you. He truly does. But it's all based on a lie, she said. Her voice didn't shake. It was steady. Cold. I stepped toward her. Emily, I didn't know until recently. I swear. I tried, I know, she said, her eyes softening as she looked at me. I believe you. But this is too much. Thomas appeared in the doorway then, as if summoned by fate, his face alert, confused. What's going on? Emily looked at him. Really looked. And then she said, in the clearest voice I'd ever heard from her, "Who are you?" He blinked, caught in the headlight of the truth. And then everything collapsed. Silence cracked open the room like a thunderclap. Thomas stood in the doorway, his hand still on the frame, frozen in place. Emily's voice, so sharp, so unflinching, had carved a wound straight through the air. "Who are you?" she had asked, and there was no version of an answer that could save him now. He stepped inside slowly, eyes moving from Emily to my father, then to me. "I think," he began carefully, "someone's been telling stories out of order." "No," Emily said. "I heard everything." My father admitted it. "You're not Thomas Bennett. Your name is Daniel Weller. And you've been lying to me since the day we met." Thomas, Daniel, let the name fall without protest. His silence confirmed more than any confession. "I didn't want to lie," he said at last. His voice was calm, low. Not defensive, but not apologetic either. "I didn't want to hurt you." Emily took a step back, as if every word he spoke was venom. "You didn't want to hurt me? You built your entire life around deception and thought that somehow wouldn't touch me?" "I changed," he said. "That's what no one here understands. I left that world behind. I built something better." My father intervened then, his voice strained. "Emily, listen." "No," she snapped. "You don't get to say anything else tonight." She turned to Thomas again. "How long? How long did you think you could live in my life without your past catching up to you?" Thomas didn't answer. I stepped forward, unable to hold back anymore. "Do you even love her?" Or was she just part of your plan to disappear? His eyes met mine, unblinking. I love her. Then why not tell her the truth? I demanded. Because the truth was a luxury I didn't have, he said. You think I wanted this? I was a target. People wanted me gone. I survived the only way I knew how. I reinvented myself. And I did it right. I stayed clean. I helped people. I built something that mattered. Emily shook her head. You built it on lies. And what would you have me do? He asked, voice rising for the first time. Go to prison for mistakes orchestrated by men 10 times worse than me? I was a pawn in something huge. I didn't steal money. I didn't create the scheme. I was there. I helped. But I was young. I got out before it imploded. And I've paid for it every day since. You paid for it by marrying into a family that trusted you, I said. By lying to a woman who believed in you. That's not redemption. That's erasure. He turned to my father now. You knew this could happen. You promised, I promised to give you a chance, my father cut in. Not immunity. The collapse was no longer metaphorical. It was visible on Emily's face. Her posture changed, as though gravity itself had grown heavier. She looked around the room, at the man she married, at the father who betrayed her trust, at me, the sister who had kept the truth just long enough to make her feel even more alone. Then she turned and walked out. No one followed her at first. We stood in that silence, the wreckage around us still smoldering. My father sank into his chair, eyes vacant. Thomas sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, head in his hands. The weight of his double life had finally crushed the illusion. I found Emily outside, sitting on the stone steps that led down to the garden. Her back was straight, her face wet with tears but oddly composed. I didn't want you to find out like this, I said softly, kneeling beside her. I didn't want to find out at all, she replied, voice hollow. I just wanted to be happy. I nodded. I know. She wiped her cheek. Do you think any of it was real? Yes, I said. That's what makes it worse. She stared out into the dark, the crickets the only sound between us. I think I need to be alone now. I didn't argue. I stood, walked back to the house, and felt something inside me fracture. We hadn't just uncovered a hidden past, we had detonated something sacred. Trust, once shattered, doesn't heal clean. It scars. Inside, Marcus was waiting. He didn't say anything. Just opened his arms, and I folded into them. Some truths change everything. And now, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after the confrontation arrived like a fog, thick, slow, and merciless. I woke up in a bed that no longer felt familiar, in a house that had become the ruins of something once safe. Marcus was already up, dressed, sitting in silence by the window. Neither of us spoke. Words felt inadequate now, too brittle to carry the weight of what had been exposed. Emily didn't come back that night. She'd taken her bag and disappeared, leaving only a short message with the receptionist at the inn, I'm safe. Don't look for me. I need time. I didn't blame her. What could I have possibly said that wouldn't feel like another betrayal? Around 9 o'clock, I went to the house. My father was in his office again, a steaming mug beside him, reading something that didn't matter. He looked up as I entered but didn't speak. I shut the door behind me. She left, I said. He nodded once. She might never come back. He said nothing. I stepped closer. You owe me the rest. Everything. No more riddles. No more pieces. I want to know why you protected him. The real reason. He studied me for a long time, then leaned back in his chair. I already told you. He saved me. I owed him. That's not the whole story. His jaw tightened. He looked away, out the window. No. It's not. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, lower, older, like he was finally surrendering to something he'd been holding back for years. It wasn't just a leak. It wasn't just my career on the line. I was involved. The words hit like ice water. I was one of the names on the list, he continued. Not a major player. Not part of the scheme itself. But I invested. Quietly. Through a third party. I didn't know what it was at first, just another promising startup, another opportunity. By the time I found out, I was already deep in it. I sat down slowly. When the investigation started, I tried to pull out, distance myself. But it was too late. My name was about to surface in a media leak. A list of investors tied to Halbridge. It would have ended my practice. Disbarred me. Destroyed everything. And Daniel, Thomas, he stopped it? I asked. He nodded. He was on the inside. Knew what was coming. He intercepted the leak and erased my name from the files. Completely. He saved me. Not just my career, my reputation, my standing, my family. And in return, I whispered, you gave him a new life. Yes. You let him into our lives. Into Emily's life. I thought it would be different, he said. I watched him rebuild. He stayed out of trouble. He kept his head down. He created a career, a new identity, a new man. When he met Emily, I tried to stop it at first. I warned him. And then? I pressed. He told me he loved her. Said she made him feel like a real person again. Not a ghost. And I believed him. I still believe him. I stood, my hands shaking. But you let her fall in love with someone built on lies. You let her marry a man you knew had the power to destroy her. He didn't argue. Didn't defend himself. She trusted you, I said. I know. I walked out before I said something I couldn't take back. In the hallway, I passed my mother. She was standing by the kitchen door, watching. Her expression was unreadable. You knew too? I asked. She didn't deny it. Not everything. But enough. Why didn't you say anything? Her voice was soft. Because I was tired of watching this family survive on appearances. Your father, your sister, you, everyone always pretending. Always choosing silence over honesty. I thought maybe, just maybe, if we let it go, it would all stay buried. I stared at her, stunned. You thought pretending would protect us. Yes, she said. But I was wrong. Outside, the sun was shining, bright and sharp against the quiet of the garden. But everything inside me felt gray. I returned to the inn, where Marcus waited with news. Julian just sent the full dossier. It's all there, documents, timelines, official records. Enough to expose everything if we need to. I nodded, taking the flash drive he handed me. And then my phone rang. It was Emily. I need to see you, she said. Alone. Emily chose the garden behind the chapel, where wild roses crept along the old stone walls and the scent of lavender lingered in the summer air. It was the same place we used to play as children, hiding behind the bushes during family gatherings, whispering secrets about the world we didn't yet understand. Now, everything had changed. She sat on the edge of the fountain, her back straight, her eyes red but dry. When I approached, she didn't look up right away. You knew, she said quietly. Before I did. Yes, I answered. I couldn't lie to her anymore. She turned toward me, her expression unreadable. How long? A few days. Maybe a little more. Her jaw tightened, but she didn't speak. The silence between us wasn't angry, it was weighty, like something ancient had cracked open and neither of us knew how to seal it. I tried to tell you sooner, I said. I was trying to be sure. Marcus found a photo. Then we heard Richard talking. Then the file in Dad's office, she raised a hand, stopping me. I know. He told me everything. I sat beside her, and for a long time, we said nothing. The breeze moved softly through the garden, stirring petals at our feet. I glanced at her hands, resting on her lap, fingers laced tightly. He said he loves me, she whispered. I didn't answer. I think he does, she continued. I think he really believes he became someone better. That if he just played the part well enough, the past would stay buried. But it didn't, I said. No, she agreed. And it won't. She finally looked at me. What do I do, Noemi? I exhaled, slowly. That's not a question I can answer. Only you know if you can forgive him. Only you know if what you felt was strong enough to survive the truth. She smiled faintly, bitterly. It's not about forgiveness. It's about trust. And that's gone. I reached into my bag and handed her the flash drive. This has everything. His real name. The records. The erased documents. All of it. It's yours. She stared at it. And if I destroy it? That's your choice. A moment passed. Then she closed her fingers around it. I went to see Mom, she said. Before calling you. My breath caught. And? She told me something I didn't expect. Something I think you should hear too. We drove in silence to our parents' house. Our mother was waiting in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She looked smaller than I remembered, quieter. As if something had unraveled inside her too. I wasn't going to say anything, she began, but I can't stay silent anymore. She motioned for us to sit. When your father met Daniel, she said, he saw more than just a kid in trouble. He saw a version of himself. Ambitious. Brilliant. Desperate. Your father didn't just invest in Hellbridge. He advised them. Quietly. Off the books. That was why he was so desperate to keep his name out of the investigation. My eyes widened. You mean, yes, she said. Your father helped build the legal framework for what they did. He thought it was harmless at first, creative funding, he called it. By the time he realized it was laundering, it was too late. Pulling out would have drawn attention. Emily's hand gripped the edge of the table. So it wasn't just guilt. It was self-preservation. He helped Daniel disappear, our mother said. And in return, Daniel, Thomas, kept your father's name out of everything. They needed each other. That's why your father pushed the marriage forward. He thought if Thomas was part of the family, everything would stay quiet. I felt nauseous again. And you let it happen. I didn't know at first, she said. But when I found out, I stayed quiet. Because I was afraid. Because I saw how happy Emily was. And because I thought maybe he really had changed. Emily stood up slowly, the chair scraping against the floor. No, she said. You don't get to use my happiness as a reason to stay silent. You don't get to decide what truths I deserve. Our mother nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. You're right. Emily turned to me. I need space. From all of this. From everyone. What will you do? I asked. I don't know. But I'm not staying here. She walked out, her steps steady. And for the first time, I believed her. The pieces were in place. The truth was known. But now came the part no one could predict, what each of us would do with the wreckage. Emily left the next morning. No one saw her go. No announcement, no note. Just a quiet absence that settled into the house like a final breath. The innkeeper said she left at dawn with a single suitcase and no forwarding address. I knew better than to try to find her. She wasn't hiding, she was choosing. I spent the rest of that day in a kind of haze, moving through the familiar spaces of my childhood home as if I were in a museum of a life that no longer belonged to me. Everything looked the same, the books still on the shelves, the framed family photos still smiling from the walls, but something had shifted too deeply to ignore. Marcus sat with me on the porch that evening, the last rays of sun slipping beneath the trees. He didn't say much. He didn't have to. We had survived something that felt like a storm, and now the silence after was louder than anything that came before. Later, Thomas, or Daniel, left too. No one spoke to him. No one tried to stop him. He walked out of the house carrying a duffel bag, his face unreadable. My father didn't say goodbye. My mother watched from the window. I stood by the door and said nothing. He paused on the porch, looked back once. I loved her, he said, almost too softly to hear. I believe you, I answered. But that's not enough. He nodded. I know. Then he disappeared down the driveway, and the silence took him with it. In the weeks that followed, the house slowly emptied. The wedding decorations were packed away or discarded. The barn returned to quiet. The guests were long gone, the laughter erased. The family was fractured. Emily sent a message eventually, just one. A photo of a lakeside cabin somewhere north, her hair tied back, her face bare. No words. But I knew what it meant. She was breathing again. Healing. Alone, but not broken. My father returned to work, but something in him remained dulled, like the sharp edges had been worn away. We didn't talk about the past. Not directly. The silence between us was different now, not avoidance, but acknowledgement. A cold understanding that some things, once uncovered, cannot be reburied. My relationship with him never recovered. Not completely. There were conversations. Civil, brief. But I couldn't pretend anymore, and he didn't ask me to. We were polite strangers in familiar roles. My mother, once so quiet, began to change. She started painting again, opened the windows more often, sat in the garden with books she never used to read. I think something inside her had shifted too, a realization that staying silent had a price. As for me, I returned to my classroom in the fall. My students never knew. I taught poetry and history and pretended to be whole. But at night, I'd remember Emily's face, that moment she asked, "Who are you?" and everything that came after. There was no reconciling the past. But there was living with it. I spoke with Marcus often about what we'd uncovered. Sometimes, we argued. Other times, we sat in silence, each of us nursing the weight of truths that no one else could see. He had been right. His instinct had saved us. But it came at a cost. And yet, I never blamed him. I blamed myself, for not noticing sooner, for doubting, for protecting peace instead of truth. Now I know better. Now I listen to the voice inside me that whispers when something feels off. I keep the flash drive in a locked drawer. Not because I want to use it, but because some truths deserve to be remembered. This story doesn't end with a family healed or a house filled with laughter. It ends with quiet, with distance, with the slow process of rebuilding. Emily began again. So did I. Our lives no longer fit the shape they once held, but in that space, something honest could grow. The scars will never fade completely. But neither will the strength that came from surviving what tried to stay hidden. This was not a fairy tale. It was something harder. Something truer. And in its place, we begin again.